Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little different. A journey into the quiet, shadowed world of medieval healing, where life and death danced together in candlelit chambers and wisdom was passed down through blood-stained hands. We're stepping into the shoes of a medieval midwife, one of the most essential yet overlooked figures of the Middle Ages. Forget the romanticized tales of knights and castles. Tonight, we're exploring the real backbone of medieval society. The women who brought life into a world that seemed determined to snuff it out at every turn. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Picture this. It's 3 a.m. in the year 1347. The world outside is pitch black, save for the occasional flicker of torchlight through shuttered windows. You're jolted awake by frantic pounding on your wooden door. Not the polite knock of a neighbour borrowing salt. This is the desperate hammering of panic, of life hanging by a thread. You know that sound. You've heard it hundreds of times before. Someone's time has come, and they need you. You are Agnes the Wise Woman, though the title feels heavier than it sounds. In a world where most people can't read their own names, you carry the weight of generations of knowledge passed down, from mother to daughter, teacher to student. Through whispered conversations and blood-stained practice, you don't have a medical degree. Universities don't accept women, and even if they did, the church considers much of what you do suspiciously close to witchcraft. But when death comes knocking at a birthing chamber, learned men with their Latin texts are nowhere to be found. They have you. Your bare feet hit the cold dirt floor of your cottage. No time for stockings or proper shoes. You grab your leather satchel, the one your mentor gave you 20 years ago when her hands became too arthritic to deliver babies. Inside, your tools of survival. Herbs bundled in cloth, a sharp knife for cutting umbilical cords, clean rags that you've boiled and dried, a small vial of holy water for emergency baptisms, and a wooden spoon worn smooth from years of use. Not much by modern standards, but in your hands, these simple items have saved more lives than the king's physicians with all their expensive equipment and elaborate theories. The voice outside belongs to Thomas the baker. His wife Margaret has been labouring since yesterday evening, and something's wrong. You can hear it in his voice, the way it cracks when he tries to stay calm. This isn't his first child, but every birth is a roll of the dice in medieval Europe. Even healthy women in their prime can die in childbirth. Margaret is neither young nor particularly healthy. She's already buried 3 infants, and this pregnancy has been difficult from the start. You wrap your heavy cloak around your shoulders and step into the night. The air is sharp with the bite of early autumn, and your breath forms small clouds as you hurry through the narrow streets. Medieval towns don't have streetlights. Navigation is pure instinct, muscle memory from countless midnight journeys to bedsides where hope and despair wrestle for dominance. Your wooden clogs echo against the cobblestones, a rhythm that says help is coming, that someone who knows what to do is on the way. The baker's house sits above his shop, and you can smell the lingering scent of yesterday's bread, mixed with the acrid smoke of dying embers. Thomas leads you up the narrow wooden stairs, his hands shaking as he pushes open the door to the chamber where his wife labours. The scene that greets you is all too familiar. Margaret lies on a straw mattress, her face pale and slick with sweat. 2 neighbour women hover nearby, their expressions grim. They've seen enough births to know when things aren't going according to plan. But this is what you do. This is what you've always done. In a world where death is a constant companion, where infant mortality rates hover around 50%, where women face a 1 in 10 chance of dying in childbirth, you stand as a guardian at the threshold between worlds. You are the steady hand that guides new life into existence, the calm voice that speaks courage into terrified mothers, the keeper of ancient wisdom that knows how to coax a reluctant baby from the womb. Margaret's contractions have been going on for nearly 18 hours, but childbirth hasn't crowned. Her water broke sometime during the night, but there's been no progress. In your experience, this could mean several things, none of them good. The baby might be positioned wrong, turned sideways or backwards. The cord could be wrapped around the neck, or worse, the child might already be dead, which would require a different kind of intervention altogether. You approach the bed with the quiet confidence that comes from decades of practice. Your hands are your primary diagnostic tools. No stethoscopes, no ultrasounds, no x-rays. Just your fingers trained to read the subtle signs that tell you what's happening inside the womb. You feel Margaret's belly, pressing gently to determine the baby's position. The head should be down, ready to emerge first, but as your experienced hands probe, you realise what you're dealing with. A breech presentation. The baby is trying to come out feet first, which, in the 14th century, is often a death sentence for both mother and child. In the modern world, this would mean an immediate caesarean section, but you don't have that option. Surgery in medieval times is crude, painful, and almost universally fatal. Your tools are knowledge, patience, and skill passed down through generations of women who learnt to work with what they had. You've successfully turned breech babies before, though it's dangerous and requires perfect timing. Too early, and the baby will just flip back. Too late, and you risk tearing something that can't be repaired. You wash your hands in a basin of water that one of the neighbour women has warmed over the fire. Cleanliness isn't fully understood in medieval times, but midwives have long known that dirty hands lead to fever and death. You learned this from your mentor, who learned it from hers, a chain of empirical knowledge that predates formal medical understanding by centuries. The church might condemn your methods as superstition, but you know they work because you've seen the results. Margaret grips your hand as another contraction racks her body, her eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. Search your face for some sign of hope. This is perhaps the most crucial part of your job, the part that has nothing to do with herbs or techniques. You must project calm confidence, even when you're not sure of the outcome. A frightened mother tenses up, making everything harder. A calm mother can work with you, can push when you need her to push and rest when rest is required. The baby is being stubborn, you tell her, your voice steady and reassuring. But I've coaxed plenty of stubborn babies into this world. We're going to take our time and do this right. You begin the delicate process of trying to manually turn the baby. Your hands work inside the birth canal, feeling for tiny limbs, trying to encourage the child to flip into the proper position. It's exhausting work, requiring strength and endurance. Margaret cries out with each manipulation. But you can't stop. If this doesn't work, you'll need to attempt a breech delivery, which is exponentially more dangerous. The other women in the room know their roles without being told. One holds Margaret's hand and whispers prayers. Another tends the fire, keeping the room warm and water heated. A third prepares clean cloths and checks your supplies. This is community medicine at its most fundamental level. No hospitals, no teams of specialists, just neighbours helping neighbours through life's most perilous moments. Hours pass, the candles burn lower, their wax pooling on the wooden table beside the bed. Margaret's strength is waning, and you can see exhaustion replacing determination in her eyes. But then, just as you're beginning to consider more desperate measures, you feel it. A shift. The baby's head drops lower, the body beginning to turn. Your patient manipulation is working, but slowly. So slowly. That's it, you whisper. More to yourself than to Margaret. Come on, little one. Turn around for us. This is the art of medieval midwifery. Not the dramatic, frantic medicine you might imagine, but a slow dance between knowledge and intuition, between human skill and forces beyond anyone's control. You've been at this bedside for 6 hours now, and dawn is still hours away, but you can feel the tide turning. The baby is cooperating, gradually moving into the correct position. As a medieval midwife, your education didn't come from books or universities. It came from watching, from doing, from making mistakes and learning from them. Your mentor took you to your first birth when you were barely 14, not to deliver the baby, but to observe, to see how life entered the world and what could go wrong. You learned to read the signs, to understand when labour was progressing normally and when intervention was needed. You learned about herbs not from botanical texts, but from walks through forests and meadows, gathering plants that could ease pain, stop bleeding, or encourage contractions. Willow bark for pain, though you didn't know it contained what would later be called aspirin.ergot for stopping hemorrhages, though you didn't understand its chemical properties. Chamomile for calming anxious mothers, raspberry leaf for strengthening the womb. Your knowledge was practical, tested by generations of women who had no other options. The church viewed your work with suspicion. Officially, pain in childbirth was divine punishment for Eve's sin in the Garden of Eden. Women were supposed to suffer, and any attempt to ease that suffering could be seen as interfering with God's will. But when their own wives and daughters were in labour, even the most pious men sent for the midwife. Theology was one thing, survival was another. You learned to navigate this carefully. You always carried holy water for emergency baptisms of babies who might not survive. You knew the proper prayers to say over a labouring woman. You understood that your work existed in a grey area between medicine and magic, between helping and heresy. One successful birth made you a saviour. One death could make you a scapegoat. Margaret's labour continues as the night wears on. The baby has turned, which is progress, but now you face the next challenge. The child is large, and Margaret is not. In a world where malnutrition is common, and women often have narrow pelvises from childhood diseases, difficult deliveries are routine. You've learned techniques for easing the baby's passage, positions that can open the birth canal, ways to support the perineum to prevent tearing. You guide Margaret through different positions, something that formal medicine won't recognise as beneficial for centuries. Sometimes labouring on hands and knees helps. Sometimes standing and walking, when possible, lets gravity assist the process. Medieval midwives understood intuitively what modern medicine has had to rediscover, that birth is not a medical emergency requiring a woman to lie flat on her back, but a natural process that works best when the mother can move and find comfortable positions. The neighbour women take turns supporting Margaret as she tries different postures. They've all been through this themselves, and they know that birth is not a spectator sport. Everyone present has a role to play, whether it's offering physical support, providing encouragement, or simply bearing witness to the miracle and terror of new life entering the world. As the hours pass, you monitor Margaret's condition carefully. Colour in her face, strength of her pulse, temperature of her skin. You watch for signs of the dangerous complications that can kill a mother in minutes, hemorrhaging that won't stop, a womb that tears, convulsions that signal a condition you have no name for but recognise as deadly. Your job is not just to deliver a live baby, but to keep the mother alive in the process. You check Margaret's pulse again, pressing 2 fingers against the thin skin of her wrist. In a world without clocks, you've learned to measure time by heartbeats, by the rhythm of contractions, by the slow progression of candle flames burning down to stumps. Her pulse is rapid but steady. Good. You've seen women whose hearts flutter like trapped birds when their bodies begin to fail. Margaret is tired, frightened, but still strong enough to see this through. The baby's head finally crowns just as the church bell tolls for morning prayers. You can see dark hair matted with birth fluids, and relief floods through you. The head is the hardest part. Once the head emerges, the shoulders and body usually follow quickly. But even now, danger lurks. The cord could be wrapped around the neck. The shoulders might be too broad. Nothing is certain until you hold a breathing child in your hands. "I can see the baby," you tell Margaret, and the exhausted woman manages a weak smile. A few more pushes, and we'll have this little one in the world. You support the emerging head carefully, your hands cupping the tiny skull as it rotates naturally. This is the moment when everything you've learned matters most. Too much pressure, and you could injure the delicate neck. Too little support, and the head could tear the mother. Your fingers slide along the baby's neck, checking for the umbilical cord. Nothing. Thank God. The shoulders come next, first one, then the other. And suddenly you're holding a slippery, blood-covered infant who lets out a strong wail of protest at being evicted from the warm darkness of the womb. A girl, healthy from the sound of her lungs. You quickly check for obvious deformities, counting fingers and toes, looking for the cleft lip or twisted limbs that mark a child as different in a world that has little patience for difference. But this baby is perfect, pink and angry and very much alive. You tie off the umbilical cord with clean thread, then cut it with your sharp knife. The blade has been cleaned with wine, another bit of practical knowledge passed down through generations. You don't know about germs or infection in the modern sense, but you know that dirty tools lead to fever and death. You place the baby on Margaret's chest, skin against skin. This isn't medical protocol, it's instinct. You've observed that babies who are held immediately by their mothers seem to thrive better than those who are whisked away. Modern medicine will eventually discover the science behind skin-to-skin contact, the way it regulates temperature and heart rate, the hormones it triggers. But medieval midwives knew it worked because they saw the results. Margaret's tears mix with sweat as she looks down at her daughter. After 3 stillborn children, after 18 hours of difficult labour, she holds a living baby. The neighbour women cluster around, cooing over the infant, offering prayers of thanksgiving. But your work isn't finished. The placenta still needs to be delivered, and this is when many women die. You massage Margaret's abdomen, encouraging the womb to contract and expel the afterbirth. This can take minutes or hours, and you've learned to be patient. Pulling too hard on the umbilical cord can tear it, leaving pieces of placenta inside the womb to rot and kill the mother with sepsis. You've seen women die days after successful deliveries because someone was impatient with this final stage. The placenta comes away cleanly after about 20 minutes, and you examine it carefully. Midwives have long known that the afterbirth tells a story. Is it intact, or are pieces missing? Does it look healthy, or are there signs of disease? The answers help you understand what happened during the pregnancy and what might happen in future ones. You wrap the placenta in cloth. It will be buried in the garden, returning to earth the organ that sustained new life. Margaret is bleeding, but not excessively. You've prepared a mixture of herbs to help her womb contract and slow the bleeding. Shepherd's purse, nettle, yarrow, plants that have been used for centuries to treat postpartum hemorrhage. You don't understand the pharmacology, but you know these herbs work. You've seen them save women who might otherwise have bled to death. The baby nurses eagerly at Margaret's breast, another good sign. Weak babies often struggle to feed, and in a world without formula or alternative nutrition, a baby who won't nurse is a baby in danger. But this little girl latches on strongly, her tiny fists pressing against her mother's skin as she takes her first meal. Thomas appears in the doorway, his face a mixture of exhaustion and joy. He spent the night pacing downstairs, listening to his wife's cries, unable to help in any meaningful way. Medieval men are excluded from the birthing chamber, not out of squeamishness, but because birth is considered women's work. The skills, the knowledge, the intuitive understanding of the female body, all of this belongs to women. You have a daughter, you tell him, and his relief is palpable. In a world with high infant mortality, the sex of the child matters less than simple survival. Sons might carry on the family name and inherit property, but daughters can work and contribute to the household economy. Any healthy child is a blessing. You clean the baby more thoroughly now, washing away the blood and vernix with warm water. Medieval people might not bathe regularly, but newborns are always cleaned immediately after birth. You wrap the infant in soft cloth that has been warmed by the fire, swaddling her tightly in the way you've learned keeps babies calm and secure. The neighbour women begin cleaning up the birthing chamber. Blood-soaked straw is gathered and burned in the fire. The mattress will need to be aired and cleaned. fresh rushes will be scattered on the floor. The room that witnessed hours of struggle and pain is gradually restored to normalcy, though it will never quite lose the echo of what happened here. You examine Margaret one more time, checking for tears that might need stitching. Your needle and thread are crude by modern standards, but you've learned to repair damage when necessary. Small tears heal on their own, but larger ones can lead to problems later. Infection, difficulty with future births, chronic pain. You clean any wounds with wine and stitch what needs stitching, your hands steady despite the exhaustion that's beginning to settle into your bones. As dawn light begins to filter through the shuttered windows, you finally allow yourself to feel tired. You've been awake for nearly 24 hours, most of it spent in intense concentration. But this is the satisfaction of the job. A living mother, a healthy baby, a family intact. In a world where death is always lurking, these small victories against mortality feel monumental. You pack your tools back into your leather satchel, each item cleaned and returned to its proper place. The bloody rags will be taken home and boiled for reuse. Nothing is wasted in medieval life, especially not the tools of your trade. Your knife goes back into its sheath, your herbs into their cloth bundles, your vial of holy water corked and tucked safely away. Margaret sleeps now, the baby curled against her side. Both mother and child have survived the dangerous transition from pregnancy to parenthood. In a few days, if all goes well, you'll return to check on them. You'll examine Margaret for signs of childbed fever, the infection that kills so many new mothers. You'll make sure the baby is nursing properly and growing. You'll answer questions and offer advice about caring for a newborn. But for now, your job is done. Thomas presses a few coins into your hand, payment for services that have no real price. How do you value someone who stands between life and death? Your fee is modest because most families can't afford to pay much. You do this work not for wealth, but because someone has to. Because women need advocates in the birthing chamber. Because knowledge must be passed on. You step out into the crisp morning air, your cloak pulled tight against the chill. The town is beginning to wake up. Smoke rises from chimneys as families kindle their morning fires. Roosters crow in distant yards. Somewhere, church bells ring the call to morning prayers. Life continues, punctuated by the small miracle you've just witnessed. This is what it means to be a medieval midwife. Not the dramatic, glamorous figure of modern medical shows, but a quiet guardian of ancient wisdom. You walk the narrow line between life and death, between knowledge and superstition, between helping and being accused of witchcraft. Your education comes not from books, but from experience, not from universities, but from other women who've walked this path before you. Your cottage comes into view as you round the corner. Soon you'll wash the blood from your hands, change your stained clothes, and try to get a few hours of sleep. But even as you rest, you know another call will come. Another woman in labour, another baby struggling to enter the world, another family balanced on the knife's edge between joy and tragedy. Tomorrow might bring a birth that goes wrong, a baby born already dead, a mother who hemorrhages and dies despite everything you do, a child with deformities that mark it as cursed in the eyes of the community. Medieval life doesn't offer guarantees, only the promise that you'll face whatever comes with the skills you've learned and the wisdom passed down through generations of women who understood that bringing life into the world is both the most natural and the most dangerous thing a human body can do. But today, there's a new life breathing in the world because you knew what to do when knowledge mattered most. Margaret's daughter will grow up, marry, have children of her own. The chain of life continues, link by link, birth by birth, with midwives standing guard at each transition. In a world that seems determined to end life at every turn, you are the steady hand that guides it safely into existence. And somewhere in the distance, if you listen carefully, you can hear it starting again. The frantic knocking on a door, the desperate voice calling for help, the eternal cycle of birth and birth again that defines medieval existence. Another woman needs you. Another life hangs in the balance. Another chance to stand between the darkness and the light, armed with nothing but knowledge courage, and hands that know how to coax miracles from the most dangerous moments of human experience. You wrap your cloak tighter and quicken your pace toward home, but the sound grows louder. Someone else is shouting your name through the early morning mist. Agnes. Agnes the wise. Come quickly. It's young Sarah, barely 16, and heavy, with her first child. You've been expecting this call for days now. First babies rarely arrive on schedule, and Sarah's been showing signs for nearly a week. You turn toward the voice and see Walter the blacksmith running toward you, his usually steady hands shaking with panic. His daughter-in-law has been labouring since midnight, and something feels wrong. The baby should have come by now, but there's been no progress. The women attending her are frightened, whispering about curses and bad omens. They need you. Your body protests. Every muscle aches from the night with Margaret. Your hands are raw from washing in cold water, and your feet are numb in your wooden clogs. But this is the reality of being the only midwife in a town of nearly 300 souls. Birth doesn't wait for you to recover from the last delivery. Babies come when they choose, and mothers die when help doesn't arrive in time. You follow Walter through the narrow streets, past houses where families are just beginning their daily routines. The blacksmith's workshop sits at the edge of town, and you can hear Sarah's cries before you reach the door. But these aren't the strong, purposeful sounds of productive labour. These are the high, desperate wails of a woman in trouble. The birthing chamber is crowded with women, all talking at once. Sarah's mother-in-law, 3 neighbours, and the parish priest's wife all cluster around the bed, where the young woman writhes in obvious distress. Her face is flushed with fever, and when you place your hand on her forehead, the heat radiates through your palm, like touching a hearthstone. This is childbed fever, though you don't know the medical term. What you do know is that it kills more women than difficult births, turning what should be a natural process into a race against death. Sarah's body is fighting an infection that your herbs and prayers might not be strong enough to combat. You send the other women to boil water and gather clean birthing chamber, creates chaos, and chaos kills to listen to what Sarah's body is telling you about mothers. You need quiet to assess the situation. Cloths. Too many people in the battle raging inside her womb. Her contractions are weak and irregular, nothing like the strong rhythmic pressure that pushes babies into the world. The fever has sapped her strength, and you can see exhaustion in every line of her face. She's been fighting this infection while trying to give birth, and she's losing on both fronts. You examine her as gently as possible, your experienced hands searching for answers. The baby's position feels normal, but something else is wrong. There's a smell, faint but unmistakable to someone who's attended hundreds of births. The sweet, sickly odour of tissue beginning to die. The infection has taken hold inside her womb, and without modern antibiotics, Sarah's chances of survival are dropping with each passing hour. In your leather satchel, you carry the herbs that previous generations of midwives have used against childbed fever. Feverfew to break the heat, echinacea to strengthen the body's fight against illness, golden seal for infection. But you've seen too many women die despite these remedies. Medieval medicine has its limits, and you're approaching them rapidly. Sarah grips your hand with surprising strength. "Am I going to die?" she whispers, her voice barely audible above the crackling of the fire. It's a question you've heard countless times, and the honest answer would terrify her. Instead, you do what midwives have always done. You lie with conviction. "We're going to fight this together," you tell her, your voice steady and sure. "Your baby wants to be born, and I'm going to help that happen." But privately, you're calculating odds that no mother should have to face. If the fever breaks and her strength returns, she might survive the birth. If the baby comes quickly before the infection spreads further, both might live. But if labour drags on, much begin the delicate process of trying to encourage stronger contractions while fighting the fever at the same time. A tea brewed from blue longa, you'll likely lose them both. You cohosh and black cohosh, plants that can stimulate the womb to work harder. Willow bark steeped in hot water to combat the fever. Cool cloths on her forehead, while warm compresses on her belly weapons that feel inadequate against women return with bow. You're fighting a war on multiple fronts with such a determined enemy, the other riling water and clean rags. You set them to tasks that keep them busy and out of your way. Someone to tend the fire, someone to prepare more herbal teas, someone to pray. Medieval birth is community work, but it needs direction, organisation, a clear chain of command when drifts in and out of delirium as death comes calling. Hours pass, Sarah the fever peaks and valleys. During her lucid moments, you coach her through breathing techniques, trying to conserve her energy for the work that's still to come. When the fever spikes, you battle it with everything in your arsenal, knowing that each degree of temperature could mean the difference between life and death. The baby finally begins to descend late in the afternoon. Sarah's contractions grow stronger as her fever breaks, and for the first time in hours, you allow yourself to hope. The child's head crowns just as shadows begin to lengthen outside the shuttered windows, and you guide the tiny skull into the world with hands that shake from exhaustion and relief. But the baby doesn't cry. The infant lies still in your hands, blue and silent. No breath, no movement, no sign of the life that should animate a newborn's body. You've delivered a dead child, and now you face the terrible task of telling a mother that her suffering has been for nothing. This is the other side of medieval midwifery. Not every story ends with healthy babies and grateful families. Sometimes, despite everything you know, despite all your skill and experience, death wins. The infection that nearly killed Sarah also claimed her child, and now you must help her grieve while ensuring she survives the aftermath. You work quickly to clear the baby's airway, massaging the tiny chest, breathing into miniature lungs that refuse to inflate. Sometimes babies who appear dead can be coaxed back to life, but this child has been gone too long. The infection that raged in Sarah's womb reached the baby days ago, and no amount of skill can reverse that damage. Sarah looks at your face and understands without words. The hope that kept her fighting through fever and pain crumbles into anguish that fills the small room like smoke. Her sobs are raw, primal, the sound of a mother's heart breaking in real time. The other women weep with her, sharing grief that every medieval woman knows intimately. You wrap the tiny body in clean cloth, preparing it for the brief funeral that will follow. Medieval infant mortality is so common that special rituals have evolved to help families cope with loss. The baby will be baptized posthumously, ensuring safe passage to heaven. A small grave will be dug in consecrated ground. Life will continue because it must, but this family will carry the weight of what might have been. Your job now shifts from delivering life to preserving it. Sarah has survived the infection and the birth, but she's weak and vulnerable. The next few days will determine whether she recovers fully or succumbs to complications that kill many women after traumatic deliveries. You examine her carefully, checking for tears, monitoring her bleeding, assessing her overall condition. The fever has broken, which is encouraging, but her body has endured tremendous stress. You prepare herbal teas to strengthen her blood, prevent excessive bleeding, and help her womb return to its normal size. The failed birth weighs on you as you work. In a world where your reputation depends entirely on successful outcomes, a dead baby raises questions about your competence. Did you do something wrong? Could another midwife have saved the child? Should you have tried different herbs, different techniques, different prayers? But this is the burden that medieval midwives carry. You stand at the intersection of life and death, taking credit when things go well and blame when they don't. The families who seek your help are desperate people facing desperate circumstances. They want miracles, and sometimes you can provide them. But sometimes, despite everything you know and everything you do, the forces arrayed against a new life are simply too strong. Sarah's mother-in-law presses coins into your hand, payment for services that ended in heartbreak. The gesture is awkward, neither of you sure what your efforts were worth when they failed to save the baby. But this too is part of medieval life. Death is expensive, and even failed attempts to prevent it have value. You pack your tools once again, each item cleaned and returned to its place, despite the sadness that hangs over the room like incense. Your knife, unused this time because there was no cord to cut. Your herbs, some successful in breaking the fever, others powerless against the infection that killed the baby. Your vial of holy water, used for a baptism that came too late. The walk home feels longer this time. Your second delivery in 24 hours has ended in death, a reminder that medieval midwifery is not just about celebrating new life, but also about managing loss. You've learned to compartmentalize grief, to mourn briefly for the babies you couldn't save, and then move forward to help the next woman who needs you. Your cottage appears around the corner, just as the church bells ring vespers. 24 hours ago, you were sleeping peacefully in your own bed. Since then, you've delivered one healthy baby and lost another, saved one mother and nearly lost a second. This is the rhythm of your life, measured not in days or weeks, but in the spaces between one crisis and the next. You wash your hands in the basin by your door, scrubbing away the blood and grief of another difficult birth. The water turns pink, then red, then finally runs clear. But some stains go deeper than soap can reach. Every lost baby leaves a mark on your soul, a small scar that accumulates over years of practice until your heart carries the weight of all the children you couldn't save. Inside your cottage, you change into clean clothes and try to eat something, though your appetite has vanished with the day's second tragedy. A piece of bread, a cup of ale, enough to keep your strength up for whatever comes next. Because something always comes next in the world of medieval midwifery. You sit by your own fire as darkness falls, thinking about Sarah and Margaret, about the baby who lived and the one who died. Tomorrow you'll check on both mothers, ensuring there a few days you'll attend recovery continue smoothly. In Margaret's baby's baptism, a celebration of life successfully brought into the world. But you'll also attend the funeral for Sarah's child, a reminder that not every battle with death ends in victory. This is what people don't understand about medieval midwives. They see only the successful births, the healthy babies, the grateful families. They don't see the nights like this one, when death wins despite everything you do. They don't see the weight of responsibility that settles on your shoulders every time someone calls your name in desperation. But you continue because someone must, because in a world where women face childbirth with minimal support and maximum danger, you are often the only thing standing between a labouring mother and death. Your knowledge, imperfect as it is, represents centuries of accumulated wisdom about the female body and the process of birth. Your hands, scarred and stained from years of practice, have guided more lives safely into the world than any physician knowledge. The fire burns lower with his Latin texts and theoretical as you prepare for bed, knowing that sleep might be interrupted again before morning. Somewhere in the darkness, another woman might be going into labour. Another baby might be struggling to enter a world that seems determined to reject it. Another family might be facing the terrible choice between losing a mother or losing a child. But tonight, you rest. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities to stand against the darkness that threatens every birth. Tonight, you mourn the baby you couldn't save and celebrate the one you could. You do this work despite it. Tonight, you remember why the heartbreak, despite the exhaustion, despite the constant presence of death at every bee, are Agnes the wise woman, guardian of the threshold between worlds side. You, keeper of ancient knowledge, in a medieval society that offers women few opportunities for independence or influence, you have carved out a space where your skills matter more than your gender, where your knowledge can mean the difference between life and death. And somewhere in the distance, if you listen carefully, you can hear it beginning again. The sound of footsteps hurrying through dark streets, the urgent voice calling for help, the eternal cycle that defines your existence, birth and death and birth again, with you standing watch at every transition, armed with nothing but wisdom, courage, and hands that have learned to work miracles in the darkest hours of human experience. The candle gutters and dies, leaving you in darkness. But dawn will come, as it always does, bringing with it new challenges and new opportunities to practice the ancient art of midwifery. Another day in the life of a medieval woman who chose to dedicate herself to the most dangerous and most essential work in human society. Another chance to stand between the light and the darkness, fighting for life, one birth at a time. The next morning arrives with the familiar sound of roosters, crowing and church bells marking the hour of prime. Your body aches in places you'd forgotten existed, muscles protesting from the previous day's marathon of life and death. But there's no luxury of sleeping late in medieval society. The sun rises, work begins, and the cycle continues, whether you're ready or not. You dress slowly, every movement a reminder of the physical toll your profession takes. Your hands are particularly stiff this morning, joints swollen from hours of delicate manipulation during Margaret's difficult delivery. These hands have caught hundreds of babies, stitched countless tears, and mixed more herbal remedies than you can count. They're the tools of your trade, and like any craftsman, you depend entirely on their continued function. A knock at your door interrupts your morning routine, not the frantic pounding of emergency, but the polite rap of someone seeking consultation. You open it to find young Emma, barely 18 and newly married to the miller's son. Her face carries that particular glow that experienced eyes recognise immediately, though she probably hasn't acknowledged it to herself yet. "Agnes," she says, her voice uncertain, "I was wondering if I might speak with you privately." You invite her in, noting the way she holds herself, the subtle changes in posture and complexion that tell a story. She's not ready to speak aloud. This is another aspect of medieval midwifery that often goes unrecognised. You're not just present for the dramatic moments of birth and death. You're a confidant, a counsellor, a keeper of women's secrets in a society that offers them precious, few private spaces. Emma sits by your fire, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "My monthly courses haven't come," she finally admits, her cheeks flushing pink. "It's been nearly 2 months now, and I believe I might be with child." In the modern world, pregnancy tests provide quick, definitive answers, but in medieval times, confirming pregnancy is an art form based on observation, experience, and educated guessing. You've developed techniques over the years, ways of reading the subtle signs that indicate a woman is carrying a child. You ask Emma about her symptoms. Has she been feeling nauseated? Her appetite changed? Does she feel unused, particularly in the mornings? Are her breasts tender or swollen? Casually tired? These questions help build a picture, though definitive confirmation won't come until the quickening, when she first feels the baby move inside her womb. "Your colour is different," you tell her, studying her face in the morning light streaming through your window. "There's a fullness to your cheeks that wasn't there before, and your eyes have that particular brightness that comes with early pregnancy." Emma's face transforms with wonder and terror in equal measure. The prospect of motherhood in medieval times is both blessing and curse. Children are desperately wanted, needed for labour and to care for ageing parents. But pregnancy and childbirth remain the leading causes of death for women of reproductive age. Every conception is a gamble with mortality. You begin Emma's education immediately. Medieval pregnancy care starts the moment conception is suspected, not when labour begins. You teach her about foods that might harm the developing child to eat and avoid, activities, signs of trouble that pass down through generations of midwives, require immediate attention. This knowledge, humanity's earliest attempts at prenatal care. Avoid lifting heavy objects, you instruct her. Don't ride horses unless absolutely necessary. Eat plenty of eggs and milk here if you can get them. Stay away from strong spices and wine, and come to me immediately if you experience bleeding or severe pain. You also prepare her mentally for what lies ahead. Medieval pregnancy lasts the same 9 months as modern pregnancy racehounds or regular medical, but without guilt monitoring, it's a journey into the unknown. Women don't know if they're carrying one baby or twins, if the child is developing normally, or when exactly labour might begin. Everything is guesswork and hope. Emma leaves with a small bundle of herbs to ease the nausea thatnings. Ginger root leaf to strengthen her womb, cham to settle her stomach, raspberries been plaguing her more a mile for the anxiety that comes with first give her a small calf pregnancy. You also amulet, blessed by the parish priest, to wear foreigns practical knowledge with spiritual protection. Medieval medicine, BL faith, and both have their place in ensuring healthy outcomes. The rest of your morning is spent in routine tasks that keep your practice running. You tend your herb garden, checking the plants that supply your medicines. Medieval Mai you can grow. Gather, midwifery depends entirely on what or trade for. There are no pharmac. Your garden is your laboratories, no reliable supply, your herbs chains, no standardized medications are your drugs, and your knowledge of their properties is literally a matter of life and death. You harvest feverfew for reducing temperatures, yarrow for controlling bleeding, and nettle for strengthening blood. Each plant must be gathered at the right time, dried properly, and stored in conditions that preserve its medicinal properties. Mouldy herbs are useless at best, dangerous at worst. Your reputation depends on the quality of your materials as much as the skill of your hands. A messenger arrives as you're bundling dried herbs for storage. One of the noble families in the manor house has requested your services, not for an immediate birth but for ongoing care of their pregnant daughter-in-law. This is both an honour and a challenge. Noble families expect more elaborate care, have access to expensive imported medicines, and hold you to higher standards than common folk. But they also pay better and can provide political protection if accusations of witchcraft ever arise. The walk to the manor takes you through the heart of medieval village life. You pass the blacksmith's forge where Walter is already at work despite yesterday, where Thomas needs tomorrow gather to drink ale and complain about taxes is bread. The tavern where men's family crisis, the baker's shop, weather and wives. This is your community, these are your people, and their reproductive health is your responsibility. The stone walls and glazed windows Proc Manor House sits on a hill overlooking the village. It's childbirth. You've seen noble laming wealth and status. But wealth doesn't guarantee successful peasant women. Same complications that kill ladies die from the death is remarkably democratic in chamber. Lady, when it comes to the Burt, a private chamber reserved for women's Catherine receives you in her solar activities. She's perhaps 20 years old, married to the Lord's eldest son, and carrying her first child. Her pregnancy, 5 or 6 months along, and she moves is more advanced than Emma's. Probably centre of gravity has shifted. With the careful deliberation of a woman who, she says, her cultured accent marking village, women speak highly of your skills, her as someone born to privilege. I want you to attend my lying in when the time comes. This is a significant request. Noble births are elaborate affairs involving multiple attendants, expensive preparations, and considerable ceremony. You'll be the lead midwife, responsible not just for delivering the baby, but for managing a complex social event that includes family members, servants, and religious officials. Lady Catherine asks detailed questions about your experience, your methods, your success rate with difficult deliveries. She's clearly intelligent and well-informed, unusual traits in an era when most women receive little formal education. But noble families sometimes educate their daughters in household management, which includes overseeing the health and welfare of everyone under their roof. You examine Lady Catherine carefully, noting the size and position of the baby, checking for signs of complications. Her pregnancy appears normal, but you make mental notes about potential challenges. She's small-framed, which could mean difficult delivery. She's nervous, which can interfere with labour. And she's surrounded by well-meaning but inexperienced relatives who might panic at the first sign of trouble. The manor's still room is well stocked with exotic herbs and spices imported from distant lands. Cinnamon from Ceylon, ginger from the Orient, precious saffron worth more per ounce than gold. These expensive medicines don't work any better than your local plants, but they satisfy noble expectations of receiving the finest care available. You spend the afternoon teaching Lady Catherine's servants about childbirth preparation. They'll need to know how to set up the birthing chamber, what supplies to gather, how to assist during labour. Medieval birth is team effort, and everyone involved needs to understand their role. Chaos in the birthing chamber kills mothers and babies with depressing regularity. The return journey to your cottage takes you past fields where peasants work in the failing afternoon light. Harvest season is approaching, and everyone who can hold a scythe is pressed into service. The rhythm of agricultural life shapes everything in medieval society, including childbirth. Babies conceived during winter celebrations are born during harvest time, when women's labour is desperately needed in the fields. This creates impossible choices between economic survival and maternal health. Evening finds you back at your own hearth, preparing for another night that might bring emergency calls. Your leather satchel sits ready by the door, packed with fresh supplies and clean tools. The herbs you gathered this morning are laid out to dry, filling your cottage with the sharp green scent of medicine in the making. A soft knock interrupts your solitary meal. Margaret stands at your door, her newborn daughter wrapped in soft wool against the evening chill. Mother and child both look well, the baby's cheeks pink with health, Margaret's colour restored after yesterday's ordeal. "I wanted to thank you properly," Margaret says, pressing a small loaf of fresh bread into your hands. "And to ask about feeding. She seems always hungry, and I worry my milk isn't sufficient." This is typical of new mothers, the constant anxiety about whether they're providing adequately for their infants. You reassure Margaret that frequent feeding is normal, that her milk supply will increase to meet her baby's needs. Medieval women don't have access to formula or supplemental nutrition, so breastfeeding must succeed or babies starve. The pressure on new mothers is enormous. You examine the baby briefly, checking for signs of thriving. Good colour, alert eyes, strong cry when disturbed, all positive indicators. You also check Margaret for signs of infection or other postpartum complications. Her healing is progressing normally, the tears from delivery beginning to close, her energy slowly returning. She's beautiful, you tell Margaret, and mean it. Every healthy baby feels like a small miracle in a world where so many things can go wrong. This child represents success, validation that your skills and knowledge matter, that the ancient wisdom of midwifery continues to serve its essential purpose. After Margaret leaves, you sit by your fire and reflect on the strange rhythms of your profession. Yesterday brought triumph and tragedy in equal measure. Today offered routine consultation and noble patronage. Tomorrow might bring anything from emergency surgery to peaceful, uncomplicated delivery. You never know what dawn will demand of you. The church bells ring Compline, marking the end of the official day. But for a medieval midwife, day and night blur together in an endless cycle of availability. Women go into labour at all hours, babies choose their own schedules, and emergencies don't wait for convenient timing. You're always on call, always your fire for the night. The co-depend on how quickly you can get from Urals glowing red beneath their blanket of bed to their bedside. You bank ready, always aware that someone's life might ash. The technique ensures warmth will last until morning, while minimising the risk of accidental fire. Like so many aspects of medieval life, it's a balance between necessity and danger, between comfort and survival. Your bed feels luxurious after the previous night's marathon. Clean straw, soft wool blankets, the privacy of your own space. But even as you settle into sleep, part of your mind remains alert for sounds in the darkness. Footsteps on cobblestones, voices calling your name, the eternal summons that defines your existence. This is what it means to be a medieval midwife. Not just the dramatic moments of life and death that people remember, but the quiet dedication to being available whenever you're needed. The daily consultations, the routine examinations, the endless teaching and reassuring and comforting that makes up the bulk of your practice. You're part doctor, part counsellor, part spiritual guide, all wrapped into one person who carries the weight of your community's reproductive health. Sleep comes eventually, but lightly. Medieval midwives learn to rest with one ear, always listening, one part of consciousness, always ready to spring into action. Because somewhere in the darkness, another woman might be counting contractions, another baby might be preparing to make the dangerous journey from womb to world. Another family might be facing the terrible uncertainty that defines childbirth in an age when death is always uninvited guest at every delivery. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, its own opportunities to practice the ancient art of midwifery. Another day of standing between life and death, of using knowledge passed down through generations of women who understood that bringing life into the world is both the most natural and the most dangerous thing a human body can do. Another chance to prove that in a world dominated by men and their theories, practical wisdom earned through experience remains the most reliable guide to navigating the mysteries of birth and death. The candle burns down to a stub as you finally surrender to exhaustion. But even in sleep, your hands remember the feel of newborn skin, the weight of tiny bodies, the desperate grip of women in labour. These memories live in your muscles, in your bones, guardian of thresholds, and tomorrow, in the very fibre of who you are. You are Agnes, the wise woman, keeper of secrets you'll wake ready to face whatever challenges the medieval world can throw at you. Because that's what midwives do. That's what they've always done. Stand ready in the darkness, waiting for the call that means someone needs you, someone trusts you with their most knowledge, and your courage might make the difference between life and death in precious moments. Someone believes that you're the endless, eternal struggle that defines human existence. The morning sun filters through the gaps in your antic pounding. No desperate voices calling through silence. No far shutters as you wake to's a rare gift, the pre-dawn darkness. It's this peaceful awakening, and you savour it for the few moments before duty reasserts itself. Your body still aches from the previous day's labours, but there's something different about this morning. A heaviness in the air that speaks of changes coming. You dress quickly, in the grey light, noting the way autumn has crept closer while you weren't paying attention. The leaves on the oak tree outside your window have begun their slow transformation from green to gold, and there's a crispness to the air that promises frost before long. Medieval seasons don't arrive gradually. They announce themselves with sudden shifts that catch the unprepared off guard. Your herb garden shows signs of the changing season. Some plants are already beginning their retreat into dormancy, their medicinal properties concentrated now in roots and seeds rather than leaves and flowers. This is the time of year when you must work frantically to preserve what you can, drying and storing the plant materials that will sustain your practice through the barren months ahead. You step outside to check your drying racks, wooden frames where bundles of herbs hang like small green prayers against the cottage wall. The feverfew needs another day, but the yarrow is ready for storage. You gather the brittle stems, their sharp scent filling your nostrils as you crumble the dried leaves into clay pots. Each jar is carefully labelled with scratches in the ceramic, a system of marks that only you understand. The sound of cartwheels on cobblestones draws your attention to the street. A merchant's wagon rumbles past, loaded with sacks of grain from the recent harvest. The driver nods respectfully as he passes. You've delivered 3 of his children over the years, and he knows the value of staying on good terms with the village midwife. Reputation is currency in medieval society, and yours has been built one successful birth at a time. But reputation is also fragile. One high-profile failure, one noble baby that doesn't survive, one accusation of witchcraft whispered in the wrong ear, and years of careful work can crumble overnight. You've seen it happen to other wise women, practitioners whose skills were unquestioned until politics or superstition destroyed them. The line between healer and heretic is thinner than most people realise. A young boy appears at your gate, one of the baker's sons, his face flushed from running. "Agnes," he pants. "Mother says to come quickly. The priest's sister has taken ill, and they fear for her life." This is unusual. Priests' families typically prefer to rely on prayer and divine intervention rather than the ministrations of village healers. For them to call you means the situation is desperate indeed. You grab your satchel and follow the boy through streets that are just beginning to show signs of morning activity. The priest's house sits adjacent to the small stone church, a modest dwelling that reflects the poverty of rural clergy. Inside, you find Father Benedict pacing anxiously, while his sister lies pale and still on a narrow bed. She's perhaps 30 years old, unmarried, as befits her position, and clearly in the grip of some serious ailment. Her breathing is shallow and rapid, her skin hot to the touch but dry. No sweating, which in your experience is a troubling sign. The fever that produces no moisture is often the most dangerous kind. You place your ear against within. The technique is crude but effective, allowing her chest, listening to the sounds you to hear the telltale rattling that indicates fluid in the lungs. "When did this begin?" you ask Father Benedict, your hands already moving to check his sister's pulse and examine her eyes. 3 days ago," he replies, his voice tight with worry. "She complained of headache and weakness. Yesterday, the fever came, and this morning she could barely speak." You recognize the pattern. This is the sweating sickness, a disease that strikes without warning and kills with frightening efficiency. Medieval medicine has no cure for it, only supportive care and prayer. Your role here will be to ease her suffering, and perhaps, if God wills it, help her body fight off the infection. You send the boy to fetch cool water and clean cloths while you prepare a mixture of herbs known to reduce fever. Willow bark steeped in hot water, supplemented with elderflower and meadowsweet. The combination won't cure the disease, but it might make her more comfortable and give her strength to endure what's coming. Father Benedict watches nervously as you work. The Church's official position on folk healing is complicated. Officially, all healing comes from God, and attempts to treat disease through herbal remedies skirt dangerously close to paganism. But unofficially, even priests' illness. Will she live? He recognised that prayer alone doesn't always suffice when facing serious asks quietly. It's the question you hear constantly, and one you can never answer with certainty. Medieval medicine is as much guesswork as knowledge, and the sweating sickness kills strong men as easily as weak children. But hope is sometimes as important as medicine, so you offer what comfort you can. She's young and strong, you tell him. Her body will fight this. We must give it every chance to succeed. Beruhigen. You spend the morning applying cool compresses to bring down her fever and spooning small amounts of herbal tea between her cracked lips. The work is tedious and heartbreaking. For every degree of temperature you manage to reduce, the fever fights back, climbing higher than before. It's like trying to empty a leaking bucket with a spoon. Medieval sickness strikes without regard for social position or moral character. The priest's sister is a devout woman in medieval society, reminding everyone that earth, yet she suffers just as much as the who has devoted her life to caring for others. Heart simply stops. You work to condition begins to change. The dry heat gives, aching the bedclothes and filling the roomly distinctions matter little when death waits a profuse sweating. So with the sharp smell of fever comes calling. By midday, here is perhaps the most democratic forced drunkard or the thief. Disease keep her comfortable, changing wet linens and encouraging her to drink small sips of strength. Either her body will successfully fight off the infection, or the sweating will weaken her further until her breaking. This is the crisis point. Fluids, rest, and the presence of caring sick people recover. Clean surroundings, adequate healing broth. Medieval nursing care is primitive by modern standards, but it lives. Father Benedict assists with surprising, having taught him something about tending the sick hands based on centuries of observation about what helps competence, his priestly duties dying. Together you maintain people. Simple interventions that nevertheless save, just family and friends taking turns until the crisis passes one way or another. The vigil that marks serious illness in medieval times. No shifts, no relief nurse's afternoon brings a gradual improvement. Her fever breaks completely, leaving her weak but lucid. She asks for water, a good sign, and manages to keep down a few spoonfuls of broth. The sweating sickness has run its course, and she has survived what kills many others. Another threatened medieval life. Thanks small victory against the forces of darkness that constantly you, Father Benedict says, as you prepare to leave. His words carry weight beyond simple gratitude. Add his sister's recovery will be seen as evidence priest's endorsement can protect you from accusations of witchcraft, and through streets where afternoon shadows are beginning to lengthen. The successful of divine approval for your methods. You walk home treatment of the priest's sister will enhance your reputation throughout the village, bringing ikroom. You clean your tools methodically. A cottage feels almost empty after the intensity of the SD in medieval medicine, just as it does in any other profession. You're more patience and more challenges. Success breeds demon ritual that helps you transition from one case to the next. The herbs used today were effective, but your supply is dwindling. Soon you'll need to venture into the forest to gather fresh materials before winter makes foraging impossible. Medieval healers must be part botanist, part pharmacist, part physician. You need to know not just which plants help which ailments, but where to find them, when to harvest them, how to prepare them, and in what doses to administer them. It's a vast body of knowledge that takes decades to master fully. The evening meal is interrupted by another visitor. This time it's Walter the blacksmith, his face grim with worry. His wife has been having strange dreams, visions of dead babies and bleeding women. She's convinced she's cursed, and her terror is affecting her pregnancy. The baby isn't due for several months, but her mental state threatens both mother and child. This is another aspect of medieval midwifery that modern medicine barely recognises. The connection between emotional health and physical well-being, between fear and actual medical outcomes. A woman who believes she's cursed often fulfills her own prophecy, her terror manifesting in physical symptoms that can indeed threaten her pregnancy. You listen patiently as Walter describes his wife's nightmares, her refusal to eat, her constant weeping. Medieval pregnancy is fraught with superstitions and fears that can become self-fulfilling prophecies. Your job is to counter these negative influences with practical care and psychological support. Bring her to me tomorrow, you tell Walter. We'll talk about her fears and find ways to ease her mind. A calm mother carries a healthy child. It's advice based on observation rather than medical theory, but you've seen how a woman's mental state affects her pregnancy. Stress and fear can trigger premature labour, complicate delivery, and even cause miscarriage. Medieval midwives understand instinctively what modern medicine has had to rediscover about the mind-body connection. After Walter leaves, you sit by your fire, need follow-up care to ensure her recovery continues, and plan tomorrow's activities. The priest's sister, Will Walter's wife, needs counselling too. Lady Catherine requires ongoing prenatal visits. Address her psychological distress. Emma needs guidance through her first pregnancy. And somewhere in the village, another woman might go into labour without warning. This is the reality of medieval midwifery. Not just the dramatic moments of birth and death, but the daily work of maintaining women's health throughout their reproductive lives. Your educator, counsellor, physician, and spiritual guide all in one person. The scope of your responsibility would overwhelm most people, but it's the life you've chosen and the calling you've answered. The fire burns lower as you prepare your supplies for tomorrow's rounds. Fresh herbs bundled and ready, tools cleaned and sharpened, mind focused on the challenges ahead. Medieval healthcare is intensely personal, built on relationships between healer and patient that span years or even decades. You don't just treat diseases, you care for whole human beings throughout their lives. A distant sound catches your attention, not the urgent summons of emergency, but the soft singing of women walking home from the fields. Harvest work continues late into the evening, when weather permits, and the female voices carry across the still air with haunting beauty. It's a reminder that life continues its ancient patterns despite the constant presence of disease and death. You bank your fire and prepare for bed, knowing that tomorrow will bring its own mixture of routine and crisis. Medieval midwifery is practiced one day at a time, one patient at a time, one decision at a time. You can't save everyone, can't cure every disease, can't prevent every tragedy, but you can show up day after day, armed with knowledge and compassion, ready to stand between your community and the darkness that threatens to overwhelm it. The autumn night settles around your cottage like a familiar blanket. Somewhere in the distance, you can hear the church bell marking the hours, a steady rhythm that has measured time in this village for generations. Tomorrow that bell might summon you to witness new life entering the world, or to comfort someone as they prepare to leave it. But tonight, you rest in the knowledge that you've answered every call, helped everyone who sought your aid, and added another day's worth of experience to the vast store of wisdom that makes guardian of knowledge that lives in hands and you valuable to your community. You are Agnes the wise woman, keeper of secrets that can't be written in books to heart, rather than in formal education. And tomorrow, when the sun rises on another medieval day, filled with uncertainty and possibility, you'll be ready to face whatever challenges come your way, because that's what midwives do. That's what they've always done. Stand ready to help when help is needed most, armed with nothing but wisdom, courage, and the unshakable conviction that every life is worth fighting for. One breath at a time. The morning sun barely penetrates the thick autumn mist as you make your rounds through the village. Your first stop is the cobbler's wife, a woman whose fourth pregnancy has been marked by swelling in her hands and face that concerns you deeply. In modern times, this would be recognised as preeclampsia, a dangerous condition that can kill both mother and child. But in your medieval world, you know only that puffy faces and swollen fingers often lead to convulsions and death. You find her sitting by her window, her hands so swollen she can barely hold her sewing. Her husband hovers nervously nearby, clearly frightened by the changes in his wife's appearance. She's only 6 months along, but already showing signs of the condition that medieval midwives fear more than difficult births or breech presentations. The swelling has worsened since yesterday, she tells you, her voice slightly slurred. Another warning sign. You've seen women die within hours of developing speech problems during pregnancy. The condition strikes without warning and progresses with terrifying speed. You examine her carefully, noting the way her skin holds impressions when pressed, the puffiness around her eyes, the way she squints in normal light. Her water tastes salty when you test it. Another sign that her body is retaining dangerous amounts of fluid. Medieval medicine doesn't understand the mechanisms, but wise women have learned to recognize the pattern. You must rest completely, you tell her firmly. No more sewing, no household tasks, nothing that requires you to be upright for long periods. Your husband will need to find help with the daily work. The cobbler's face falls. Hiring help costs money they don't have, but losing his wife would cost far more. This is the cruel mathematics of medieval life, where survival often depends on resources most families lack. You leave them with herbs that sometimes help. Willow bark tea and dandelion to reduce the swelling, but privately you fear for both mother and child. Your next stop brings better news. Emma, the young woman whose pregnancy you confirmed just days ago, glows with health and excitement. The morning sickness has passed and she's begun to feel the first flutterings of life inside her womb. This quickening, as it's called, marks an important milestone in medieval pregnancy. Before this moment, the Church considers the pregnancy uncertain, the soul not yet present. After quickening, the child is considered fully human. It feels like butterflies, Emma laughs, her hands pressed to her still flat belly, or like bubbles rising in ale. You smile at the description. Every woman describes the first movements differently, but all share that sense of wonder at feeling another life stirring within. It's a magical moment that never loses its power, even for someone who has witnessed hundreds of pregnancies. You teach Emma how to track the baby's movements, counting kicks and noting patterns of activity. Active babies are usually healthy babies, while stillness can indicate problems. This knowledge, passed down through generations of midwives, represents humanity's first attempts at monitoring fetal well-being. The conversation turns to practical matters. Emma will need to prepare birthing supplies, gather help for the delivery, and make arrangements for the weeks of recovery that follow childbirth. Medieval women don't return to normal activities immediately after giving birth. The lying-in period, when new mothers remain in bed while other women care for them, is essential for survival in an age without modern medical intervention. Start collecting clean rags now. You will need more than you think. Anise her. You'd find women who can help when your time comes. Birth is not something to face alone. Emma nods eagerly. Herify more experienced women. First pregnancies are often easier youth, making her optimistic about challenges that tear physically, but harder emotionally, as women discover how much they didn't know about their own bodies. Your job is to educate and prepare her for realities that no amount of explanation can fully convey. The walk to Lady Catherine's manor takes you past the village well, where women gather to draw water and exchange gossip. Their conversations cease as you approach, then resume in whispers after you pass. This is the eternal burden of being the local wise woman. People need your services desperately, but they also fear the knowledge you possess. Midwives walk the line between helper and outsider, essential yet suspected. Lady Catherine receives you in her solar, a bright room filled with expensive tapestries and imported luxuries. Her pregnancy has progressed well, but she's developed the restlessness that often strikes noble women in their final months. Accustomed to active lives managing large households, they struggle with the enforced inactivity that pregnancy demands. "I feel like a cow being fattened for market," she complains, gesturing at her expanded figure. "Surely there must be something I can do besides sit and embroider." You understand her frustration, but movement in late pregnancy carries risks that wealthy women often don't appreciate. Their comfortable lives haven't prepared them for the physical limitations that pregnancy imposes. Peasant women work until labour begins, often returning to the fields within days of giving birth. Noble women have the luxury of rest, but they chafe against restrictions they're not accustomed to following. Walk in your garden if the weather permits, you suggest, but avoid stairs and horses. Your body's preparing for birth, and rest serves a purpose even when it feels tedious. Lady Catherine's questions reveal the anxiety that all pregnant women share, regardless of social status. Will the birth be painful? How long will labour last? What if something goes wrong? These fears are universal, transcending the boundaries of class and education. Rich or poor, learned or ignorant, every woman faces childbirth with the same fundamental uncertainties. You examine her carefully, noting the way the baby has settled lower in her pelvis, the changes in her posture and gait that indicate approaching labour. First babies rarely arrive precisely on schedule, but the signs suggest she has several weeks remaining. Time enough to complete preparations and gather the team of attendants that noble births require. Your baby lies head down, which is favourable, you report. The position is good, and your body shows signs of readiness. When your time comes, everything should proceed normally. It's the kind of reassurance you offer cautiously, knowing that childbirth can change direction without warning. But Lady Catherine needs confidence more than detailed warnings about potential complications. Fear serves no useful purpose when it can't be acted upon. The manor's stillroom provides an opportunity to replenish your supplies with expensive herbs unavailable elsewhere, imported spices like cinnamon and ginger, exotic plants from distant lands that cost more than most people earn in a year. Lady Catherine insists on paying for a generous supply, understanding that your services to her will be enhanced by access to the finest medicines available. The afternoon brings you to Walter's house, where his wife Sarah sits by the window, staring at nothing. Her pregnancy continues normally from a physical standpoint, but her mental state has deteriorated since her nightmares began. She barely acknowledges your presence, lost in whatever dark visions plague her sleep. She won't eat, Walter whispers, his voice thick with worry, says the food tastes like ash, and she cries constantly, sometimes for hours without stopping. This is the condition medieval healers call melancholia, a darkness of the spirit that can prove as dangerous as any physical ailment. Modern medicine would recognize it as depression, potentially triggered by hormonal changes and exacerbated by superstitious fears. But in your world, it's seen as evidence of spiritual attack or divine punishment. You sit beside Sarah, speaking quietly about her fears and dreams. The nightmares always involve dead babies, women bleeding to death, children born with monstrous deformities. These images reflect genuine risks of medieval childbirth, but her obsession with them has become pathological. Dreams are not prophecies, you tell her gently. Fear can make bad things seem more likely than they are. Your body's healthy, your baby grows normally. There's no reason to expect tragedy. But reason has little power against the kind of terror that has gripped Sarah's mind. Medieval psychology understands that thoughts can affect physical health, that a mother's mental state influences her unborn child. Your treatment must address both the symptoms and their underlying causes. You prepare a mixture of herbs known to calm anxiety and lift depressed spirits. St. John's wort, lavender, lemon balm, plants that medieval healers have used for centuries to treat disorders of the mind. The remedies work sometimes, though not always, and their effectiveness often depends as much on the patient's willingness to recover as on the herbs themselves. Take this tea 3 times daily, you instruct Walter, and bring her to see me twice each week. Sometimes talking helps more than medicine. Sarah finally looks at you directly, her eyes reflecting a pain that goes deeper than physical discomfort. "What if I'm cursed?" she whispers. "What if my dreams are warnings from God?" It's a question that strikes at the heart of medieval worldview, where supernatural explanations compete with natural ones for understanding of disease and misfortune. Your answer must acknowledge her fears while offering hope for recovery. "God doesn't curse innocent women," you reply firmly, "but worry and fear can make us sick in body and spirit. We must fight against Atansara's pregnancy." Medieval healing, steady and reassuring as you work darkness, not surrender to it. The conversation to counter the negative thoughts. That 3 continues for nearly an hour. Your voice, physical well-being. Evening fine sizing that emotional and spiritual health directly affect you back at the cobbler's house often involves as much counselling as medicine. Wreckhagen, where the situation has worsened dramatically. His wife now complains of severe headaches and spots dancing before her eyes, symptoms that in your experience herald the convulsions that kill so many pregnant women. Her face is grotesquely swollen, her speech slurred, her responses sluggish. "We must prepare for early delivery," you tell the cobbler quietly. "The baby may need to come soon, whether or not it's ready." Medieval medicine has no treatment for what modern doctors call eclampsia. Once the convulsions begin, both mother and child usually die within hours. Your only hope is to deliver the baby quickly before the condition progresses to its fatal conclusion. It's a desperate gamble with terrible odds, but the alternative is certain death. You send the cobbler to gather the women who will assist at the birth, neighbours, relatives, anyone with experience in the birthing chamber. If labour must be induced prematurely, you'll need all the help you can get. The baby, born at 7 months, will have little chance of survival, but saving the mother requires removing the source of the poisoning that threatens her life. The herbs you use to encourage labour contractions are dangerous in themselves. Too little and nothing happens. Too much and you can rupture the womb or cause bleeding that won't stop. Medieval obstetrics is a constant balancing act between competing risks where every decision carries the potential for tragedy. The cobbler's wife goes into labour just after midnight, her contractions weak and irregular due to her condition. You work by candlelight, your hands guided by experience rather than sight, feeling for the baby's position and monitoring the mother's deteriorating state. Her breathing is laboured, her consciousness fading in and out as the toxemia affects her brain. The baby comes quickly, too quickly, a tiny girl barely the size of your two hands. She breathes for perhaps an hour, her lungs too immature to sustain life outside the womb. You baptize her with holy water, ensuring her soul's salvation even as her body fails. Another casualty of medieval medicine's limitations, another reminder of how often death wins despite your best efforts. But the mother survives. The delivery removes the poisoned pregnancy from her system, and within hours her swelling begins to subside. Her speech clears, her headaches fade, her vision returns to normal. She will live to bear other children, though she'll never forget the daughter who died to save her life. Dawn breaks grey and cold as you walk home through empty streets. Your clothes are stained with blood and birth fluids, your hands raw from scrubbing with harsh soap, your heart heavy with the weight of another lost baby. But the mother lives, and in medieval terms, that represents success. One life saved from certain death, even at the cost of another barely begun. Your cottage feels like sanctuary after the intensity of the night's work. You change into clean clothes, wash your hands and face and try to eat something despite your exhaustion. The bread tastes like sawdust, the ale bitter on your tongue. Loss affects your appetite, makes everything seem less vibrant, less meaningful. But there's no time for prolonged mourning. Before you can rest, another messenger arrives with news of complications at a birth across the village. A woman whose labour has stalled, whose baby refuses to be born despite hours of pushing. You gather your tools once more and prepare to face another challenge, another opportunity to practice the ancient art of midwifery. This is the rhythm of your life, measured not in days or weeks, but in the spaces between crises. Sleep when you can, eat when you remember, work when you're needed. Medieval midwifery demands complete dedication, total availability, absolute commitment to the welfare of women and children who have nowhere else to turn. The sun climbs higher as you hurry through streets that are beginning to show signs of daily activity. Smoke rises from chimneys, roosters crow in distant yards. The church bell marks another hour in the endless procession of time. Life continues its ancient patterns, punctuated by the moments when you're called to stand guard at the threshold between worlds, armed with nothing but knowledge, courage, and hands that have learned to work miracles in the darkest hours of human experience. The woman you find is young, perhaps 18, and this is clearly her first child. Her mother hovers nearby, wringing her hands and offering useless advice that only increases the girl's panic. The father paces outside like a caged animal, forbidden from entering the birthing chamber, but unable to leave the vicinity of his labouring wife. You assess the situation quickly. The girl has been pushing for 6 hours with no progress, her strength nearly spent, her face grey with exhaustion. This is what medieval midwives call a dry birth, where the waters have broken too early and the baby becomes stuck in the birth canal. Without the slippery fluid to ease its passage, the child cannot descend normally. Your experienced hands tell you what your eyes cannot see. The baby's head is positioned correctly, but wedged tight against the pelvic bones. In modern medicine, this would call for immediate surgical intervention. In your world, you have only patience, skill, and techniques passed down through countless generations of women who faced identical challenges. You dismiss the well-meaning relatives who crowd the small room. Too many voices create confusion, and confusion kills mothers. You need calm, quiet, and space to work. The girl's mother protests, but you're firm. Birth is serious business, not a social gathering for nervous family members who contribute nothing but anxiety. We're going to try something different, you tell the exhausted mother, helping her into a squatting position. Medieval midwives understand instinctively what formal medicine will take centuries to accept, that gravity can be an ally in difficult births. The change in position might give the baby just enough room to continue its journey. The technique works slowly. Over the next 2 hours, the baby descends incrementally, each contraction bringing minimal progress, but progress nonetheless. You massage the mother's back, offer sips of herbal tea for strength, and provide the steady encouragement that keeps her fighting when her body wants to surrender. Finally, just as the morning sun reaches its zenith, the baby's head crowns. You guide the tiny skull carefully, your hands cupping the emerging life with practiced gentleness. The shoulders follow, then the body, and suddenly you're holding a slippery, crying infant who protests loudly about being forced from her warm cocoon. Another girl, another healthy baby brought safely into a world that seems designed to kill children before they can draw their first breath. You perform the familiar rituals, clearing the airway, cutting the cord, checking for obvious deformities. Everything appears normal, though the baby is smaller than ideal due to the prolonged labour. The new mother weeps with exhaustion and relief as you place the infant on her chest. Skin-to-skin contact helps regulate the baby's temperature and heart rate, though you don't understand the science behind this intuitive practice. You know only that babies held immediately by their mothers seem to thrive better than those whisked away by nervous relatives. The placenta delivers cleanly after another hour, and you examine it carefully for signs of infection or retained pieces. Medieval women die more often from complications after birth than during it, usually from fragments of afterbirth left inside the womb to rot and poison the blood. Your inspection reveals nothing concerning, so you wrap the organ in cloth for burial in the family garden. By the time you finish cleaning up and ensuring both mother and child are stable, the afternoon shadows are growing long. You've been awake for nearly 36 hours, sustained by nothing but determination and the occasional sip of ale. Your body aches in places you'd forgotten existed, and your hands shake slightly from exhaustion. But there's satisfaction in the work, deep fulfillment that comes from knowing your skills made the difference between life and death. Without intervention, both mother and baby would have died. Another tragedy in a world already too familiar with loss. Instead, a new life breathes, a young woman survives to raise her child, and a family remains intact. The walk home takes you past the church, where evening prayers have just concluded. Father Benedict emerges from the stone building and nods respectfully as you pass. His sister's recovery has cemented your reputation with the local clergy, providing protection against accusations of witchcraft that could destroy everything you've built. Your cottage appears around the corner just as the church bells ring vespers. Smoke rises from your banked fire, and the sight of home brings tears of exhaustion to your eyes. You've answered every call, helped everyone who needed you, and somehow managed to save more lives than you lost. In medieval terms, this represents an exceptionally successful day. Inside, you change into clean clothes and try to force down some food, though your appetite remains elusive. The bread is stale, the cheese hard, but you eat mechanically, knowing your body needs fuel even when your mind rejects nourishment. Medieval midwives learn to eat when they can, sleep when possible, and work whenever duty calls. You sit by your fire as darkness settles over the village, reviewing the day's cases in your mind. The cobbler's wife who lost her baby but survived the poisoning of her pregnancy. The young mother whose difficult labour ended successfully after hours of patient work. Each case teaches you something, adds to the vast store of experience that makes you valuable to your community. The herbs drying in your rafters rustle softly, in the evening breeze that seeps through gaps in your shutters. Soon winter will force you indoors for months, living off preserved medicines and hoping your supplies last until spring brings fresh growth. Medieval healers must think seasons ahead, gathering and storing when abundance allows for the lean times that inevitably follow. A soft knock at your door interrupts your solitary meal. You open it to find Emma, the young woman whose pregnancy you confirmed weeks ago. She glows with health and excitement, her belly now showing the first gentle curve of new life growing within. "I wanted to thank you for your guidance," she says, pressing a small jar of honey into your hands, "and to ask about preparations for the birth. My mother says I should start gathering supplies now." You invite her in, noting how pregnancy has changed her posture and gait. She moves more carefully now, instinctively protecting the precious cargo she carries. This awareness of vulnerability is healthy, a sign that she's beginning to understand the seriousness of what lies ahead. "Honey is excellent medicine," you tell her, examining the golden sweetness in the flickering firelight. "It prevents infection and provides strength when nothing else will stay down. You've chosen your gift well." The conversation turns to practical matters. Emma will need clean rags for the birth, enough to fill several baskets. She'll need women to assist, experienced mothers who know what to expect and can help when complications arise. She'll need a safe, warm place for the delivery, with good light and access to hot water. Most importantly, you tell her, you'll need courage. Birth is hard work, the hardest thing your body will ever do. But women have been doing it since the beginning of time, and you're strong enough to succeed. Emma's questions reveal the mixture of excitement and terror that marks every first pregnancy. Will she know when labour begins? How much will it hurt? What if something goes wrong? These are the eternal concerns of expectant mothers, unchanged since the first woman brought forth life in pain and wonder. You answer each question patiently, drawing on decades of experience to provide reassurance without false promises. Medieval childbirth carries real risks that can't be minimised through optimistic platitudes, but fear serves no useful purpose when it can't prevent the dangers it anticipates. Trust your body, you advise. It knows what to do, even when your mind doubts, and trust that I'll be there to help when your time comes. No woman should face birth alone. After Emma leaves, you return to your fire and the endless task of preparing for tomorrow's challenges. Your leather satchel needs repacking, its contents checked and replaced as necessary. The knife must be sharpened, the herbs sorted, the holy water blessed by Father Benedict for emergency baptisms. Medieval midwifery requires constant preparation, endless vigilance, total dedication to being ready when crisis strikes. You can't predict when labour will begin, when complications will arise, when death will come, calling with its terrible demands. You can only ensure that when the moment arrives, you're equipped with everything knowledge and experience can provide. The fire burns lower as you organise your supplies, each item carefully placed for quick access in darkness. Your hands know these tools by touch alone. The smooth handle of your birthing knife, the rough texture of hempen rope for cutting cords, the soft cloth bundles that hold your most precious herbs. These simple objects represent power in a world where women have few opportunities to shape their own destinies. Through your skills, you influence who lives and dies, which families remain intact and which are shattered by loss. It's a responsibility that would crush most people, but you've learned to carry it with grace born of necessity. The church bells ring compline as you prepare for bed, marking another day survived in the endless struggle between life and death that defines medieval existence. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities to practice the ancient art of healing, new chances to stand guard at the threshold between worlds. But tonight, you rest in the knowledge that you've answered every call, helped everyone who sought your aid, saved more lives than you lost. In a world where death stalks every birthing chamber, where women die in agony while bringing forth life, you stand as guardian and guide, armed with wisdom passed down through generations of brave women who refuse to surrender to the darkness. Your cottage settles into silence as the village sleeps, but part of your consciousness remains alert for sounds in the night. Footsteps on cobblestones, voices calling your name, the eternal summons that might come at any hour, demanding that you rise from your bed and venture forth to face whatever crisis awaits in the shadows. Because that's what midwives do. That's what they've always done. Stand ready in the darkness, waiting for the call. That means someone needs you. Someone trusts you with their most precious moments. Someone believes that your knowledge and courage might make the difference between tragedy and triumph in the endless dance between life and death that defines human existence. The candle gutters and dies, leaving you in darkness, shot through with the red glow of dying embers, but dawn will come, as it always does, bringing with it new challenges and new opportunities to practice the sacred art of midwifery. Another day in the life of Agnes the wise woman, keeper of secrets, guardian of thresholds, standing watch in the eternal vigil that protects the most vulnerable moments of human experience. And somewhere in that darkness, as you drift towards sleep with the weight of another exhausting day settling into your bones, you can hear it beginning again. The soft patter of feet on wet cobblestones. A whispered conversation between two women hurrying through the night. The creak of a door opening carefully, trying not to wake sleeping children. Your eyes open before the knock comes. Experience has taught you to recognize the sounds that precede emergency, the particular quality of movement that speaks of urgency barely contained. When the rap finally echoes through your cottage, it's soft but insistent, the kind of knock that says, "We need help, but don't want to wake the entire village." You rise from your straw mattress with the practiced efficiency of someone who has done this hundreds of times before. Your hands find your clothes in the darkness, your feet locate your wooden clogs, your fingers automatically check the contents of your leather satchel, everything exactly where it should be. Because in your profession, fumbling in the dark can mean the difference between life and death. The voice outside belongs to young Timothy, the miller's youngest son, his words tumbling over each other in nervous haste. His sister-in-law has been labouring since yesterday evening, but something feels wrong. The baby should have come by now, and the women attending her are growing frightened. They've sent for you because whispers are beginning to circulate about curses and bad omens. You wrap your heavy cloak around your shoulders and step into the night air that carries the sharp bite of approaching winter. The mill sits at the edge of the village, where the stream that powers the great wooden wheel also provides the sound of running water that has lulled generations of millers' families to sleep. But tonight, the familiar murmur is interrupted by sounds that speak of struggle and fear. The miller's house buzzes with nervous energy. Too many women crowd the birthing chamber, their voices creating the kind of chaos that makes difficult situations worse. You can hear the labouring woman's cries even before you climb the narrow stairs, and the sound tells you immediately what you're dealing with. These aren't the strong, purposeful sounds of productive labour. They're the high, desperate wails of someone fighting a battle she doesn't understand. Inside the small chamber, you find a scene that has become disturbingly familiar. The miller's daughter-in-law lies pale and sweating on a straw mattress, her face grey with exhaustion and something else. Fear, the kind of bone-deep terror that comes when your body betrays you in ways you never imagined possible. She's been pushing for nearly 12 hours, but the baby refuses to descend. The other women step back as you enter, their relief palpable. Someone who knows what to do has finally arrived. Someone who might be able to make sense of the nightmare that has trapped them all in this small room, where time seems to have stopped and hope grows thinner with each passing hour. Your experienced hands begin their examination immediately, reading the story written in flesh and muscle and bone. The baby's position is wrong, turned sideways in the womb like a key that won't fit its lock. This is what medieval midwives call a traverse birth, one of the most dangerous complications you can face. Without intervention, both mother and child will die, probably within hours. But intervention in medieval times means working with your hands alone, using techniques passed down through generations of women who learned through trial and error what works and what kills. No surgical instruments, no anesthesia, nothing but knowledge earned through centuries of desperate attempts to coax reluctant babies into the world. You send the nervous relatives away, keeping only 2 experienced women who can follow instructions without falling apart when things get difficult. The chamber needs calm, not chaos. Panic spreads like plague in confined spaces, and panicked women make fatal mistakes that cost lives you might otherwise save. The process of turning a sideways baby is exhausting, dangerous work that requires strength, endurance, and the kind of delicate touch that comes only from years of practice. Your hands work inside the birth canal, feeling for tiny limbs, trying to encourage the infant to rotate into the proper position. Every movement must be precise, gentle enough not to injure the child, but firm enough to guide it toward the narrow passage that leads to life. The labouring woman grips your forearm with desperate strength, her nails leaving crescents in your skin. Medieval women endure pain that would fell grown men, sustained only by the knowledge that this suffering has purpose, that something precious waits at the end of the ordeal. You've learned to read their faces, to know when they're reaching the limits of endurance, when encouragement matters more than technique. Hours pass in the dim light of flickering candles. Your back aches from bending over the bed. Your hands cramp from the delicate manipulation required to turn the baby. Your voice grows hoarse from the constant stream of encouragement and instruction that keeps the mother fighting when her body wants to surrender. But gradually, incrementally, you feel the change you've been working toward. The baby's head drops lower, the body beginning to rotate into the correct position. It's like solving a puzzle made of flesh and bone, where every piece must fit perfectly or the whole structure collapses into tragedy. And so the cycle completes itself, as it has for countless generations before and will for countless more to come. The baby turns, descends, emerges into the world with a cry that pierces the pre-dawn darkness, like a bell tolling victory over death itself. Another life begins its journey. Another mother survives the crossing between worlds. Another family remains whole against odds that would crush the spirit of lesser souls. This is the eternal rhythm of medieval midwifery, measured not in days or seasons, but in heartbeats, in first breaths, in the spaces between one miracle and the next, where women like Agnes stand guard with nothing but wisdom, courage, and hands that have learned to coax life from the very edge of darkness.